So a bill to repeal a former bill that was created in 2021 was recently rejected by both Republicans and Democrats. And this was a repeal that Thomas Massie was pushing out. And Thomas Massie is one of the few individuals in Congress who's actually trying to limit our government, enhance individual rights, and speak up no matter which political party you're on or that you're affiliated with. He is trying to push out what is constitutionally correct, whether it's fiscal responsibility, making sure that the government doesn't increase their power so that it can infringe on us further, which inevitably occurs. Now, this bill from 2021 was to set in motion how car manufacturers, vehicle manufacturers, need to put in their cars that you are now going to monitor with different criteria whenever people are impaired. This is specifically for the consumption of alcohol, although this can easily expand beyond that when you have government control over vehicles, which you always have that to some extent. You have regulation, for example, on seatbelts. Now, seatbelts, if we go into a side tangent, are seatbelts lawful? Yes, obviously, they have passed in law. Are they constitutional? The answer is also yes. And the reason for that is if you have multiple individuals in a vehicle, if one individual is not wearing a seatbelt and there's a car accident, that one individual can serve as a projectile and hit other individuals who can also, in tandem with whoever else is in the vehicle, can be seriously injured as a result of many moving domino pieces. However, if you're by yourself in a vehicle, there is less of a constitutional argument. I'm not advocating you do this, but there's less of a constitutional argument to require a seatbelt because you're no longer a threat to other individuals. Therefore, you can't infringe on someone else's rights.
If you are thrown out of the windshield and hit a pedestrian.
That is true, but now we're adding something that is less reasonable and it's more external in the circumstance. Because you can take that concept and apply it to literally anything, right? We should ban alcohol because someone could get drunk, go to the store, and rob the liquor store. And we don't want liquor stores to be robbed. Well, now you're adding many more variables to the situation, which makes it less reasonable. But if it's pertinent to the exact situation that we're in, there's less of a constitutional argument for an individual who is by themselves to require them to wear a seatbelt. Now, if they prefer to do that, fine. Now, as per the law, and I believe this is a state issue. So as per the state will mandate if you are required to wear a seatbelt. I don't know if this is still in many states, but if you're an adult in the back seat, you may not be required to wear a seatbelt. You have to check your state law on that. So when it comes to this situation, this is to require certain criteria, technological criteria, are to be met to verify if someone is impaired. And then if someone is impaired, well, the car will shut down. So this is like a kill switch. Now, it's going to take until, we're already in 2026. So the next couple of years, that's when there's mandated production of these new technologies within the vehicles that come out. So this was created 2021. It took us a few years to get to this point. Thomas Massie's trying to repeal it. Both parties, they say, we're not going to repeal it. Okay, vast majority. And I'll cover all the details in just a moment. Now, there are two issues with this, two primary issues. One, this is already legitimately a violation of the Sixth Amendment. Let's also preface this. Do we think that less drunk drivers on the road makes the road safer? 100%. But less cars on the road also makes us a safer society. So should we ban all vehicles? Right now, people are going to say no. 20, 30, 40 years from now, if I ask the same question, people are going to say, yes, we should ban all vehicles. Or they may add the caveat or the condition, we don't want manual drivers. We want artificial intelligence to drive our vehicles around, which would theoretically be safer. So whatever we're advocating for right now, the public sentiment is going to change 30, 40, 50 years from now. And part of that is not just because there's new technology and people are looking at data and statistics, or they're looking at the Constitution to deem what is constitutional or unconstitutional. They're listening to the media. And the media is inoculating you to make you side on certain issues. And the vast majority of people will go with it. So if the media for the next few decades tells us you want AI to drive your cars, you want to make sure it's a safer society. What if you're in a car and a drunk driver hits you? You don't want that. And people will think, yeah, I don't want a drunk driver to hit me. So naturally, over time, we're going to outlaw manual driving of vehicles. It's going to happen. I don't know when. We can presume how, but over time, that's going to happen. We already have the building blocks with this technology. Now, who's to say this won't be used for other instances? Maybe and again, people falling asleep, very dangerous. People having sex in cars, very dangerous. People drinking and driving, dangerous. All these things are dangerous.
People having sex in cars while they're driving?
That does occur, yeah. I mean, you're familiar with that, are you not?
I don't know if I was full on having sex though.
No, I'm saying you're familiar with the concept, right?
I am somewhat familiar with the
Okay.
concept.
Okay. So people do crazy stuff in cars. Now, putting that aside, this can expand. The expansion is what we're concerned about. The expansion of how over time this will be used if you're a political dissident. If there are people in the government, and there are different factions in the government, but let's just say the intelligence community or politicians or whoever's in charge of the executive branch as the administration, not necessarily this administration, but any administration, if they don't like who you are, if they don't like what you're against, if they don't like what you're saying online, they can shut down your vehicle. Keep in mind,
Is this a switch where they have to first get your breathalyzer to be able to switch on and off?
well, now you're pertaining this specifically to alcohol. I'm saying that this will expand beyond alcohol. There's other technology that will be implemented in the car beyond a breathalyzer. So there's going to be different sensors that can detect alcohol, like when you're gripping the steering wheel and stuff like that. If it detects alcohol, it'll shut down the vehicle. Hopefully, when it does
Well,
shut,
this one is about mostly alcohol first, right?
right? Yeah, yeah. So it's going
And
to.
then they're doing it with the breathalyzer, or is there
Well, they already have that in vehicles right now, where to start your vehicle, you have to use a breathalyzer. But this is going to. This is without you being tried in court, without you having due process. So this
But
is just for
how
everyone.
does this detect the alcohol?
I just told you one way. It's going to detect it if there's any trace of alcohol on your fingers and you're holding the steering wheel or touching anything in the console, your car won't work. Hopefully, if you're driving, it pulls you
What
over
if
to
you
the
use
side.
hand sanitizer?
I said, well, I'm sure it's detecting a certain percentage of alcohol and a type of alcohol, right? Ethyl alcohol versus methyl alcohol. So it's going to detect it.
Immediately I was thinking like the breathalyzer, which is if you breathe in it and you exceed a certain amount, your car won't start.
Right. So they already had that for people who have been convicted of driving while intoxicated.
But
But this is going to be for everyone.
and this is has to work with new cars manufacturers, and they come out with cars that detect alcohol
Correct.
level.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out how they
I
do
just
that.
told you one way.
Is that the way you're guessing, or is that
No,
how
it's in here. It's in here. I'll read it. It's in here. Other ways are there going to be cameras that will detect if someone's inebriated or if they're drowsy.
So what if they're just fucking Asians?
Okay, well, there's multiple items here, and it's going to be using artificial intelligence with different tools to detect this person is 95% inebriated. We're going to pull over to the side, we're going to shut the car down, and we're going to call law enforcement. But
Is
I'm
there
saying,
a way to say, well, this person is 95% Asian, he's fine, so keep it going?
I don't know why you're saying Asian.
Because the eyes thing, they might think, is he falling asleep?
Yeah, but are you going to have alcohol on your hands? Or are you going to be like swerving in and out of the road? I mean, it's detecting multiple behaviors. It's not just one behavior.
Okay.
Although I did see in China, was this in China? I think it was in China. Obviously, China is advanced in terms of electric vehicles and the technology that they use in their vehicles. Now, they don't have a Sixth Amendment like we do, so they can completely infringe on people's rights. But there was a vehicle that detected,
I thought you wanted to visit China. How are you going to be saying stuff like this?
there was a vehicle that, I've already been in China. There was a vehicle that detected that someone was not paying attention to the road and the car shut off. It just turned out that the man was Asian.
Exactly.
So that has already occurred in China, assuming that report was
And
legitimate.
this is funny because this would be Chinese technology. I would assume they have already accounted for the genetic phenotypes of their people.
Again, I don't remember if it was specific to Chinese EVs or if it was a different country, but they're still gathering data. So whatever 1 in 1.8 billion that this occurs, or however many people are in China, 1.5, 1.6. Okay, let me just read some data. Actually, let me cover the Sixth Amendment part before I read this. So the Sixth Amendment is your right to face your accuser in court. The Sixth Amendment, if I'm going to be extremely technical with it, which is important when we're defining legal terminology here and when we're adjudicating as per judicial review, your right to face your accuser in court has to be a sentient, organic life form pertaining to your species. Okay. So, for example, if a dog catches you, let's say it's a legitimate real dog, it's an actual organism. If a dog catches you running a red light and there's a camera attached to the dog and it's the police department and then you get a ticket in the mail, that doesn't count as that is a proper accuser that you get to now face in court. It needs to be a police officer who's of.
Well, but what if people who are caught on videos committing murder and stuff like that?
So but who's accusing you? The state, right? So then they're taking multiple pieces of evidence and putting it together.
Yeah, so in the case with the red light, wouldn't the state be prosecuting you?
The state is prosecuting you, but this is at a lower threshold than murder. And murder, well, first off, there's going to be so there are different levels to this. Reasonable, articulable suspicion. That's just for detainment. Then for an arrest, you need probable cause. Then to substantiate the arrest, you need evidentiary or substantial evidence that could be shown in a court of law, and then criminal charges are tacked onto that. And then you have either state criminal charges or federal criminal charges. There's different systems for that, like for indictments and all that. And then you either take a plea deal as per the court or you go to trial, and then all the evidence comes out. So now it's just, okay, here's the video footage, here's the murder weapon, etc. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about you running a red light and you have a right to face your accuser in court. In this case, the accuser is a camera, so you have no one to face. When it comes to a murder, well, your accuser would theoretically be the victim, but the victim is dead. So the state is stepping in terms of you have infringed on this person's right.
For justice.
And so, yeah, in the act of justice, and because of how egregious this is, and they're not just using one point of evidence. I mean, they could, but it's stupid because a jury is ruling on this, right? In this case, when you're receiving a ticket, there's no jury. It's just you're receiving a ticket and you need to pay the ticket
And
to
you
the state.
haven't infringed on anyone's right in that sense.
Well, you may have, but you still need someone who is an organic, sentient life form of your species to make that determination. It cannot be an inanimate object. And I'm sure the founding fathers did not have a prognosis of Big Brother because they came about in the 1700s. But Big Brother is very nefarious. We see this in China right now. And you create zero margin of opportunity for any type of free will to do anything, really. So the Sixth Amendment is a blockade against Big Brother surveillance. That's primarily what it's, I mean, that's not why it was created, but because it's an absolute right and it exists as the Sixth Amendment, we get to now use it to combat a type of Big Brother situation. But that's different than you committing murder. You have a right to a trial, etc. And because you have such a minor traffic infraction, it's like a Class C misdemeanor if you receive a ticket in the mail for running a red light or something of that nature. I guess you could do a trial.
I have received that before.
Yeah, I guess you could do a trial because you go to court. The officer would have to show up.
Well,
You're going to talk to a judge.
Send a ticket with a picture of your car running a red light.
Yeah, so in our state, the last time I checked, they have disabled all the red light cameras, even though they still exist. They've disabled them because it does violate the Sixth Amendment. So with this, you now have all these technologies that are accusing you of a crime, and there's no one behind it. It's just artificial intelligence. So now AI is making that determination. So that's different than, yes, humans are using tools, but they're already presuming that you're guilty. Like they're already, by having cameras, the government coming in, having cameras in your vehicle, that's an infringement of the Fourth Amendment. Because the government is forcing, it's mandating per regulation, which is now intervention of government, within vehicle manufacturers to put items in your car
So
to now target you, huh?
So no more roadhead.
Well, you can do whatever you want. So let's go over the old bill here. So enacted in November 2021 as part of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act. This is under HALT, which is Honoring Abbas Family Legacy to Terminate Drunk Driving Act. This directs the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration to establish a federal motor vehicle safety standard requiring the technology in all new passenger vehicles manufactured after the rule's effective date. The timeline, NHTSA was required to issue a final rule by November 2024, with compliance potentially starting in 2026 models, but delays have pushed implementation to 2027 or later. The advocacy of this, pushed by groups like Mothers Against Drunk Driving, MAD, to address over 13,000 annual U.S. drunk driving deaths. No similar mandates exist in other countries yet, though Europe has explored related technology. Now, I will say we do want to reduce drunk driving. You're not going to reduce it down to zero unless you participate in such radical regulation and policy that now it infringes on people's rights. But one way to get rid of drunk driving is
FSD.
Well, yeah, we're going to end up there anyways. But it's to have such strict penalty if you're partaking in surpassing the limit.
Well, I mean, FSD it simply is the best way to get rid of drunk driving.
No, we're already getting to that point though. That's already going to happen. Full self-driving is already going to occur. And over time, cars will be outlawed. I mean, that's my prognosis. But I'm stating right now, how you get rid of drunk driving is if you're caught drunk driving and you're beyond the legal limit, even if you're under the legal limit, but it's considered reckless because you're swerving in lanes, like some people just can't tolerate their alcohol that well. But if you want to be objective about it, you put a hard limit, 0.08 blood alcohol level or blood alcohol content. If you're above that limit, 10, 20 years in jail. I mean, just make it a very harsh penalty. You're not even going to risk drinking and driving. It's not even worth it. It's not even worth it. And we have Uber, we have Lyft, we have all these different tools that people can use. If you have gone out to drink, use an Uber, use a Lyft. It's actually not that crazy. I mean, and if you can't afford it, well, maybe you shouldn't have gone out to drink in the first place, right? And perhaps we should have more rehabilitation for people, the subset of the demographic, where they have a huge dopamine surge compared to the average populace when they do consume alcohol. And so if it's harder for them to get off of alcohol. They become more physically addicted to it. So we could participate in more rehabilitation for those specific people. But if you make the penalties harsher, that's automatically going to disincentivize and discourage people from drinking at all. Now, I do think if you're a passenger or if there's an open container, like those laws do infringe on rights because you can have passengers who are drinking. Granted, you may claim subjectively that these passengers could be rowdy. They could intervene in your ability to drive, which could make driving more hazardous. That is a good argument to be made, but that is separate than the driver drinking, right? Okay, so here's what the technology is going to be. Advanced drunk driving and impaired driving prevention technology must passively, without user input, monitor driver performance for signs of impairment, so erratic steering, braking, or detect blood alcohol concentration.
So what if you're a woman and it just detects bad driving?
Well, over time with FSD and the removal of manual drivers, we won't have to worry about that issue. 0.08% legal limit in most states, then prevent or limit vehicle operation. So the examples of this are going to be breath or touch-based sensors on the steering wheel or ignition to detect alcohol, cameras or infrared systems for eye tracking, drowsiness detection, no remote access. The law specifies in-vehicle systems only, no provision for government or external control. This one we should be highly suspect of because if you already have the tools in your vehicle, like the hardware is there, hardware plus software is in your vehicle, and it can safely move you over to the side and shut down your car. Well, first off, we already know that Central Intelligence Agency and other parts of our intel community can remote turn off your vehicle. So the bill may say this is not going to be a possible situation, but we already have the technology to do it now. And there are many examples that the government has intervened to shut down people's vehicles, people of interest, persons of interest.
This is like Tesla's vehicles?
No, it doesn't. No, it could be ICE. So internal combustion engines.
Oh.
Because it's just that technology. It's not necessarily about the engine or the lack thereof. I mean, there is a motor in Tesla. It's just based off of electricity. But all of the modern vehicles we have already have chips in them. They already have smart chips in them. Like how the vehicle runs through the ECU, which is like the computer, the computational component of the vehicle, that already exists. Unless you go to a vehicle that's maybe
older,
pre-1980 or something like that. But all these vehicles, let me not say all, most of these vehicles can already be remotely controlled. They can already be hijacked. Let's see here. Recent efforts to block or repeal it have failed. In January 2026, Representative Thomas Massey proposed an amendment to a spending bill. Okay, it was tied to an Appropriations Act. So this is part of an appropriations bill. So there's appropriations bill, and then there's a bill to actually execute on it. Appropriations is just we want to allot or not allot capital funding to X, Y, and Z programs. To defund NHTSA's implementation. It was defeated in the House by a vote of 268 to 164, with many Republicans joining Democrats to oppose the amendment. So the majority of our politicians deem it as a good idea, perhaps because there are special interests tied to it. However, this is going to have to be a more longer-term special interest, because if you're hoping for the idea of We want to massively control the populace through surveillance. We want to restrict their freedom. We want to control their behavior. This is a long-term vision because you're betting on the future of technology. You're betting on technology that will exist 20, 30, 40 years from now, at least from a commercial point of view. So you have to start now, and that means you have to have members of Congress on your side to vote for or against in favor of your interests. And this is what we see right now. Where do you see this going in the future?
I see FSD will fix most of these problems, but that's probably not the point. They do want surveillance, and FSD might be a way to add more surveillance into the cars and other systems. It will get rid of drunk driving and car accidents, I suppose, which is a good part, but it will add in a layer of surveillance because the more technology that a car has, the more ways they can survey you, right? So more than just cameras and microphones, it will be a more deeper level of surveillance, maybe even including tracking your heart rate, tracking your health monitor progress. And so they know, like, this guy's due for a doctor visit in like 2 months and needs certain kind of medicines or whatever.
Well, those are benefits to advancing technology.
Perhaps, or maybe not. But I mean, if controlling the populace leads to a better society, I suppose that could be a positive outcome.
Well, you have less freedom at that point. What if you're now you can't you have to be censorious. You have to self-censor. If you're saying items that could trigger an administration, whether it's left or right, they could shut down your vehicle. They could say this individual is a political dissident. We already have this, by the way. It's just done in a more manual way, even though we have technology. So if you're considered a person of interest, like Tulsi Gabbard, who is now the director of national intelligence, when she was a member of Congress, she was considered a person of interest. Maybe this is after she resigned, actually, but she would go to the airport and she would be flagged by the Transportation Security Administration, and she would have to go through secondary screening always because she was on there's a program called the Quiet Skies program, which is if you're a person of interest, you're a higher risk individual, we're going to put you through secondary security screening and they can flag you. So now you can be on the no-fly list. And this is a government intervention. It has nothing to do with the airline. I mean, the airline could say, we don't want this person to fly, but the government is coming in saying these are persons of interest because of, they don't even have to give a reason. They could just say they're part of an FTO, like a foreign terrorist organization. They're part of a domestic terrorist organization. I mean, they can just tack on these symbols or these monikers. And now you can't fly, you can't travel, you can't use a vehicle. Eventually you won't be able to spend, save, invest. This is what we're seeing. And just on a side tangent, there was an experiment done with people going into Teslas, and this is not to hate on Teslas. Hopefully they work on this because they are at the forefront of full self-driving vehicles, and I would love to just sit in the car and do work and not have to drive. But there is a high amount compared to ICE vehicles with RF EMFs. So this is radio frequencies within the electromagnetic field. And so you can see the non-ionizing radiation is still a type of radiation, so it can interfere in biological processes. There is speculation, but I'll just say more of a hypothesis that hasn't been fully scientifically tested, that it can do much more than that. It could potentially permeate and disrupt DNA. However, the mainstream science determines that only ionizing radiation can do that, but non-ionizing can definitely interfere in biological processes. So they've done this test. People have gone in the Teslas and they have a meter that reads it, and the RFs are extremely high compared to, let's say, an ICE vehicle because of all the technology that's in it. So now we have, I'll say unintended in this situation, unintended consequences of adding all this technology. I mean, we are biological organisms. So when we are implanted into a situation where there's a bunch of tech and it's giving off, let's say, information that our bodies can't necessarily handle. So, for example, our eyes can only see a certain spectrum of light. We can't see infrared. We can't see ultraviolet. There are other animals who can. They can see different parts of the spectrum, the light spectrum, that we can't see. That's just based off our evolution. So just because a lot of people will be skeptical, oh, you're going in a car, you don't feel or see anything, so it must be fine. That's not necessarily true. You can't see radiation from the sun, but if you stand out in the sun and you burn your skin, you are getting ionizing radiation to your skin. You're getting UVB. And if your skin or body can't tolerate it, you're now permeating and disrupting your DNA, which can develop into skin cancer. So just because you can't see something or hear something doesn't mean it doesn't exist, right? Another example of this is as we get older, our ability to hear higher frequencies gets degraded. So they've done tests where they have like a 15-year-old, a 25-year-old, a 40-year-old, 60-year-old, and they play different frequencies. And the older people can't hear it. And you can slowly slide the scale down to lower and lower frequencies. And then eventually the older people, they can start to hear it at different times. So that's just another side tangent.